Have you ever noticed that sometimes the loudest truths are spoken in silence? That love can be hidden, not in words or dramatic gestures, but in the quiet presence of someone who struggles to show it. What seems distant on the surface may actually be a profound sign of closeness waiting to be understood. When an avoidant is deeply attached to someone, they rarely display it in dramatic gestures or overt confessions of love. Their attachment is quieter, woven into their presence rather than their performance. They may not be the ones to fill the air with promises or declarations, but they will be there in the stillness, showing up in ways that can easily be overlooked by those expecting fireworks. This subtle presence is their language of closeness. To them, appearing in your life consistently, without drawing attention to themselves, is both an act of courage and a testament to the depth of their connection. They do not give their time and energy lightly, so when they choose to return again and again, even without words, it is a silent sign that you matter deeply. For someone with avoidant tendencies, intimacy often feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. The fear of losing independence or being consumed by the other person is strong, so they carefully manage their distance. Yet, when they allow themselves to keep showing up despite these fears, it reveals that something within them values the bond more than the illusion of safety. Their presence, no matter how understated, becomes a quiet rebellion against their own patterns of withdrawal. It is a way of saying, "I want to be here," even when their voice does not speak it aloud. This presence can be recognized in the simplest moments. They might not plan elaborate surprises or dramatic encounters, but you notice they are there when you need them most. They may respond when others would remain absent, or they might check in without being asked, often in ways that seem small but are in fact significant. It could be a message at an unexpected time, a sudden willingness to meet, or just their consistent return after periods of silence. Each act of showing up is weighted with meaning, even if they themselves struggle to admit it. Their quiet consistency can be misunderstood as indifference, but it is actually a rare expression of devotion. For them, being present is not casual, it is intentional. Every time they choose to step back into your world instead of disappearing completely, they are crossing a personal threshold, battling inner resistance, and choosing connection. This is why their subtle presence is not a sign of hesitation, but of hidden depth. It is not the loudness of their actions, but the quiet reliability that reveals the true weight of their attachment. When an avoidant person becomes deeply attached, one of the clearest but often overlooked signs is the way they begin to reveal pieces of their inner world. Vulnerability does not come easily to them. They are usually the guardians of their own emotions, keeping doors firmly shut to protect themselves from potential rejection or engulfment. Yet, when attachment begins to run deep, cracks appear in those walls, and through them you may glimpse parts of their authentic self that others rarely see. These moments are subtle, but they carry immense weight, because for an avoidant, sharing feelings is not casual. It is a deliberate and risky act that signals trust. They may not pour out their hearts in a flood of confessions, but you might notice them opening up about things that matter on a deeper level. It could be a story from their childhood that shaped who they are, an insecurity they usually mask with indifference, or even an admission of doubt or fear about the future. These fragments of vulnerability might appear suddenly, often in quiet moments, when they feel safe enough to let their guard slip. To anyone else, these disclosures might seem small, but for the avoidant, they represent a profound gesture of closeness. What makes this guarded vulnerability so significant is the contradiction it holds. On one hand, their instinct tells them to stay distant, to protect themselves from the pain of being known too deeply. On the other hand, their attachment compels them to let someone in, even if only in small, careful doses. The tension between fear and desire for connection creates a delicate balance, where each revelation becomes a step further into intimacy. In this way, their guarded sharing is not just about communication, it is an internal battle where their trust for you outweighs their habitual retreat. This sharing is often done indirectly, layered in cautious words or half-statements, as though they are testing whether it is safe to go further. They may watch closely how you respond to these glimpses, gauging whether you will hold their truth with care or turn it against them. When they sense that their vulnerability is met with acceptance rather than judgment, they gradually allow more of themselves to surface. These rare disclosures are the avoidant's way of saying that you have reached a part of them they usually keep hidden, a sign that their attachment has moved beyond the surface and into a place of genuine trust. When an avoidant is deeply attached, their protective energy begins to emerge in ways that are quiet yet unmistakable. They may not speak of love openly or show affection in extravagant forms, but their instinct to safeguard the person they care about reveals itself in subtle behaviors. It is not protection born from obligation or control, but rather from a deep, often unacknowledged desire to ensure that the one they are connected to remains safe, supported, and shielded from harm. This protective energy is rarely put into words. Instead, it flows through silent acts that often go unnoticed until one reflects on them. You might notice it in the way they keep an eye on your well-being without making a show of it. Perhaps they quietly step in when they sense you are overwhelmed, taking on a task you had not asked for but needed help with. They may observe your environment, making sure that situations around you are steady and less chaotic. Sometimes it is as simple as walking you home, checking if you arrived safely, or adjusting their plans to ensure you are not left vulnerable. These gestures, though often subtle and understated, carry the weight of their care more than any spoken words could. For the avoidant, protection is a language of intimacy that feels safer than verbal expressions of love. They may struggle to articulate what you mean to them, but by shielding you in practical, sometimes almost invisible ways, they show what they cannot comfortably say. This instinct to guard you is often more powerful than they themselves realize, revealing the depth of their attachment in a way they cannot hide. It is not rooted in possessiveness. Rather, it stems from a sense of loyalty and responsibility that grows stronger the more they value your presence in their life. The paradox is that while they may distance themselves emotionally at times, their protective energy persists. Even when they step back, their concern for your safety or well-being does not vanish. In fact, it is often in these moments of withdrawal that you see their care most clearly because they still find quiet ways to look after you. This protective presence is their way of giving without demanding recognition, of expressing attachment without confronting the vulnerability of direct expression. It is in these silent acts of guardianship that their deepest feelings reveal themselves, far more than any grand declarations ever could. When an avoidant person is deeply attached, their feelings often surface not in dramatic words, but in the quiet rhythm of small, intentional acts. They may not be comfortable with open displays of affection, yet they find ways to express closeness through everyday gestures that seem modest on the surface, but hold deep meaning underneath. To them, love is less about saying the right words and more about doing the small things that show they are thinking of you. These acts may not always be obvious, but they are chosen carefully, and they reveal a form of intimacy that is both subtle and enduring. You might notice it when they remember details you mentioned long ago, things you may have forgotten yourself. Perhaps they recall your favorite food and bring it without being asked, or they notice when you are tired and quietly adjust their pace to ease your burden. It could be as simple as sending you a link to something they thought you would like, fixing something in your space without making a fuss, or creating small comforts that they know will make your day lighter. These actions may seem ordinary, but for an avoidant, they are profound signs of attachment because they require thought, attention, and a willingness to let someone else's needs guide their behavior. What makes these small acts meaningful is that they often come from a place of silent observation. Avoidants tend to watch closely, picking up on patterns and noticing what matters to you without asking directly. They may not always verbalize their concern, but their attention is translated into action. By adjusting themselves to your preferences or anticipating your unspoken needs, they demonstrate a form of care that words alone could never capture. It is their way of saying, "I see you," without having to cross into emotional territory that feels unsafe to them. This form of expression is especially telling because avoidants are naturally inclined to guard their independence. For them to alter their habits or routines, even in small ways, is evidence of deep connection. It shows that you are significant enough for them to step outside their comfort zone and prioritize your well-being, even in the smallest details. These gestures may not announce themselves with grandeur, but their quiet persistence weaves a fabric of closeness that is difficult to mistake. In these understated offerings, their attachment finds its truest and most reliable voice, one that speaks not in words, but in the steady language of action. When an avoidant becomes deeply attached, their connection is often marked by a constant push and pull between distance and desire. They long for closeness, but at the same time, they fear it. This inner struggle is one of the most telling signs of their attachment, because it reveals that their emotions are strong enough to challenge the defenses they have carefully built over time. Unlike someone who feels safe in intimacy, the avoidant does not move toward connection with ease. Instead, they oscillate between retreating into their independence and reaching out for the bond they secretly crave. This tension, though confusing on the surface, is in fact a clear sign that their feelings run deeper than they are able to express. Their withdrawal is often mistaken for disinterest, yet it is usually the opposite. When the emotions they feel become too overwhelming, their instinct is to step back, not because they do not care, but because caring so much frightens them. The vulnerability that comes with deep attachment clashes with their need for self-protection, creating a cycle where they pull away only to return again. This return is not accidental. It is driven by a pull stronger than their fears, a magnetic force of desire that keeps drawing them back no matter how far they try to run. Each reappearance is an unspoken confession that the bond has become essential to them. This dance between distance and closeness can be frustrating for both sides, yet it is also what makes their attachment unmistakable. If they were indifferent, they would not struggle. They would simply drift away without conflict. But the fact that they wrestle with themselves, that they retreat and then come back, shows that the relationship has touched something within them that they cannot easily escape. Their silence or temporary absence is not a rejection, but a coping mechanism, a way of managing emotions that feel too intense to handle directly. The true meaning of this struggle lies in its persistence. They may repeat the cycle many times, but with each return, it becomes clear that their desire for connection outweighs their fear of it. The push and pull, as painful as it may feel, is in reality a testament to the depth of their bond. It reveals a heart torn between the need for safety and the longing for intimacy, and in that tension lies the undeniable proof of how deeply they are attached. When an avoidant is deeply attached, one of the most powerful yet understated signs is their silent loyalty. Unlike those who openly proclaim devotion or showcase it with constant verbal reassurance, the avoidant expresses commitment in ways that are subtle, steady, and often hidden beneath their reserved nature. They may not always voice their intentions or feelings, but their continued choice to remain present in your life, despite their natural inclination toward distance, speaks volumes about the strength of their attachment. Loyalty, for them, is not about dramatic displays, but about quiet consistency that endures even when words fail. You may notice this loyalty in the way they stand by you during difficult times, not always with comforting speeches, but with a dependable presence that does not waver. They might not say, "I will always be here for you," but their actions quietly confirm it. Even when they need space, they do not sever the bond completely. Instead, they maintain a thread of connection, returning again and again, proving that their attachment is not fleeting but rooted in something far deeper. Their loyalty is revealed in their refusal to walk away, even when intimacy challenges them or when vulnerability feels overwhelming. This kind of devotion is particularly significant because it runs counter to their natural defenses. Avoidants often value independence above all else, guarding their freedom as a shield against emotional risk. For them to remain steadfastly tied to someone means that person has become an exception, a presence too important to be sacrificed in the name of self-protection. Their silence is not a lack of care but a reflection of the depth of their trust, as though their very loyalty is the purest form of expression they can offer without betraying their own nature. Over time, this silent loyalty becomes the strongest evidence of their attachment. It may not be accompanied by romantic gestures or spoken promises, but it is seen in their constancy, their subtle acts of choosing you, and their persistence in maintaining the bond despite their struggles with closeness. In a world where words can be easily spoken and easily broken, the avoidant's quiet loyalty carries a rare kind of weight. It is a loyalty that does not depend on show or performance, but on the steady decision to stay, to return, and to hold on to the connection that matters to them more than their fear of intimacy ever could. When an avoidant is deeply attached, one of the most revealing yet hidden signs is their emotional presence, even in times of absence. On the surface, their behavior can seem cold or detached, especially when they retreat into solitude or withdraw from direct contact. To the untrained eye, this withdrawal looks like indifference, a deliberate cutting away of intimacy. Yet the truth often runs much deeper. When an avoidant cares, their distance does not mean that they have forgotten you. Instead, it means they are holding you in their thoughts, grappling internally with the strength of their attachment, even if their body is far away. This invisible presence is a paradox. Though they are absent in form, they remain tethered to you in mind and spirit. What makes this quality so unique is the duality within it. Avoidants are known to value independence as a shield against the vulnerability of closeness. But when they form a deep connection, that independence becomes compromised. They may retreat into their own space, but they cannot fully escape the pull of someone they are attached to. Their mind wanders back to conversations you've shared, to the sound of your voice, to the feeling of being in your presence. In their solitude, they replay moments and sift through emotions they cannot easily express aloud. This inner preoccupation is a powerful sign because it shows that you remain with them even when their instinct is to step back. The emotional presence of an avoidant in absence often comes through in small, indirect signs. They might reach out unexpectedly after a period of silence, not with flowery words, but with a question or a simple gesture that reveals they were thinking of you all along. They may send something that reminded them of you, or they may return to a discussion you thought they had forgotten, proving that your presence was alive in their mind. These actions may appear minor, but they are fragments of an ongoing internal dialogue, a way of keeping the connection alive even when they cannot confront it face to face. This lingering presence also reveals the intensity of their bond. If you did not matter to them, their distance would be absolute, and absence would truly mean absence. But when they are attached, their retreat is never complete. It is filled with an invisible thread of longing and thought, a hidden presence that remains with you even when their defenses tell them to pull away. In this way, absence is not an erasure but a reflection of their struggle. They distance themselves not because they wish to disconnect, but because the depth of their emotions unsettles them. The very act of thinking of you in solitude becomes both their comfort and their challenge. And so, while the world may interpret their silence as detachment, it is in fact a quiet testament that you have entered a place within them where even absence cannot diminish your presence. For the avoidant, independence is not just a preference, it is a sanctuary. Their autonomy is the ground on which they stand, the shield they use to guard themselves against vulnerability and dependence. To share space with another, to compromise their routines or allow intrusion into their private world, often feels unnatural, even threatening. Yet, when an avoidant becomes deeply attached, you begin to see subtle but undeniable shifts in how they hold their independence. These changes are not loud or obvious, but they mark a profound internal shift, the recognition that the bond they have formed is worth softening their boundaries for. One of the clearest signs of this is their willingness to make adjustments in their daily life. An avoidant is usually very protective of their schedule, their habits, and their personal rituals, but attachment encourages them to bend these rules. They may rearrange their plans to see you, invite you into moments they once kept strictly for themselves, or make space for your needs alongside their own. These adjustments might seem small from the outside. Watching a show you like, shifting their free time to align with yours, or letting you into their sacred alone time. But for them, each of these steps carries deep meaning. It is their way of saying that you are no longer outside the walls of their independence, but have been allowed a place inside it. This willingness to compromise does not come without inner conflict. For the avoidant, sharing space feels like walking a tightrope between desire and fear. They want to let you in, but they also fear losing themselves in the process. Yet their choice to make room for you, even cautiously, shows that attachment is outweighing their fear. They are choosing connection over complete autonomy, something that goes against the grain of their usual patterns. This quiet reordering of priorities demonstrates that you have become significant enough to reshape the very structure of their life. Another sign of this shift is their openness to sharing private parts of their world. Avoidance often creates strong boundaries around personal spaces, both physical and emotional. To invite you into their home, their routines, or their unguarded moments is not a casual act. It signals trust, comfort, and a deepening of intimacy that words could never fully capture. When they allow you into places they once kept hidden, they are showing that their independence is no longer something they must defend against you, but something they are willing to share with you. The beauty of this subtle change lies in its sincerity. For the avoidant, compromise is never given lightly. Every adjustment, every shared moment, every small surrender of independence reflects an internal decision that you are worth the risk. Their independence remains important, but it begins to stretch and reshape itself to hold both their sense of self and their attachment to you. In these quiet concessions, their deepest feelings are revealed, for they would not alter the core of their world unless love had already taken root within it. The avoidant heart may not love in ways that the world easily recognizes. It does not declare itself loudly, but it endures quietly. It protects, it returns, it remembers, it adjusts, and above all, it remains. To see the signs of their attachment, one must look beyond the absence of words and into the constancy of their actions. In their subtle presence, in their small gestures, in their silent loyalty, lies a love that is not shallow but deep, not fleeting but lasting. And when you learn to recognize it, you discover that even the quietest forms of attachment can be the most enduring of all.